Afternoon in Hebrew. Thanks for tuning in to what is now going to become for a while a 2 afternoon a week sort of mini program. I'll explain a little bit more about it. We started a week ago. If you are watching and you want to comment on the column I'm going to read during it or after, I'll try to spend a little bit of time afterwards addressing any questions or issues or comments. I kind of want to do that this way, at least for the time being, as opposed to total interactivity via video conference. But anyway, this is from the left wing. The background is that about 10 years ago, I was asked with a number of other rabbis to write a monthly column. At the time, the Jewish Federation had just revamped, I think, its website, and they wanted 4 or 5 rabbinic voices from different denominations and from different perspectives to write a column. And so I decided to write mine, sort of describing from different aspects my sort of version of progressive Judaism, maybe very progressive. And so I called it From the Left Wing, using that left-right spectrum that many of us are familiar with from politics. But in this case, the left and right that I was referring to is on the spectrum of religion, not just Judaism, but all religious traditions. Most have a more traditional or conservative adherence, which would be the right wing, and then there are the more liberal and progressive adherents, and that would be the left wing in terms of practice and philosophy of religion. And of course, with any spectrum, most of us are somewhere on the spectrum in between. I wrote my column, at least describing myself as further along, or maybe very far along towards the left end of that spectrum, having grown up in a small Jewish movement known as the Society for Secular Humanistic Judaism. I don't identify with secular humanistic Judaism anymore, although I am a humanist for sure, and live a largely secular life, although I certainly there's many religious aspects to my life as well. But being part of that movement growing up, along with other experiences and just sort of my personality and education, led me, when I landed in Reform Judaism, to find myself, or to place myself right there on the left. And so I just want to kind of really briefly give a little bit of a left-right sort of orientation, at least from my point of view. When we talk about the spectrum in terms of religion, I would say the more left you go, folks are religiously more flexible, or as flexible as possible when it comes to traditions, when it comes to practice, when it comes to philosophy of religion. On the right, folks are as traditional as possible when it comes to those aspects of religious practice. On the left, adherents of religion are more open to change when it comes to religious practice, religious observance. On the right, they're more resistant to change. And in some cases, the further right you go, there is objection to change. On the left, religiously speaking, those adherents, we're very open to dialogue and programming with adherents of other religious traditions and even non-religious traditions. And mostly open to the idea that other traditions contain teachings and practices of value. Whereas on the right, folks are more guarded about dialogue and programs with adherents of other traditions, and are more closed to the idea that other religious traditions contain teachings and practices and philosophies of value. Finally, on the left, there's a broad and inclusive definition around who can identify with their tradition, who can join, who can participate, who can convert. Whereas on the right, there's the more right you go, the more rigid and exclusive you get in terms of definitions around who can identify with that tradition. So with that having been said, I'm going to read another one of, I guess I'm going to call them another essay that was part of the monthly column that I wrote for 2 or 3 years. It's springtime and a great time for weddings. A lot of people love to get married in the spring. And so I picked one that has to do with weddings. Although obviously this spring with the virus and shelter in place, many weddings are being sadly rescheduled, necessarily, but sadly rescheduled. But I'm going to bring a little wedding into our afternoon. I do want to say that I made the decision to read one each of these times that I'm going to go live. I'm going to do this Tuesday at noon and Thursday at noon. Last Tuesday we did 2. I did 2 because last Thursday was still Passover, and so it doubled up on Tuesday. But I think I'm just going to read one each time I go live. So you can tune in Thursday at noon for yet another column. But here's what I wrote, and this is what I'm going to read this essay now. The bride was Buddhist and from Tokyo. The groom Jewish and from St. Louis. The ceremony needed to be translated into English, into Japanese for the bride's family. Along with the wine for Kiddush, the couple shared tea, a Japanese custom. Afterwards, we were sitting at the reception table. The bride and groom were trying mightily to keep conversation going with everyone involved. But with the language gap and the culture gap, we fell into a few moments of uncomfortable silence. Suddenly and softly, the mother of the bride, the Japanese bride, started to sing in Hebrew. Shalom Chaverim, Shalom Chaverim, Shalom, Shalom. Then she taught us the song in Japanese. Turns out this wonderful woman, dressed in a colorful kimono, teaches nursery school in Japan and makes sure her students are exposed to songs from a variety of cultures, including Jewish culture. The ice was broken, and we then had a marvelous evening of connection, which helped send the newlyweds onto their life's journey with many blessings from their wedding. Unlike most rabbis, even a surprisingly large and growing number of Reform rabbis, I officiate weddings. In addition, I gladly co-officiate with clergy from other faiths when having 2 traditions represented is important to the couple and their family. Because of this stance, I've had the privilege of witnessing many moments of cross-cultural shalem, which is our word for wholeness. The Jewish bride, who delighted in being festooned during the wedding ceremony with jewelry from her new Hindu relatives. The Kenyan groom, who smashed the glass under the chuppah and then held hands with his white Jewish bride as they followed an African-American ritual and jumped over the broom. Watching newly related by marriage families finally make spiritual connections with one another across religious traditions. Each time a Christian clergyman and I conclude a wedding ceremony by delivering the priestly blessing together, alternating between Hebrew and English. In this time and place, the old tribal boundaries are crumbling. People of many faiths, traditions, races, and cultures effortlessly live, learn, and work side by side. Relationships between individuals of different backgrounds form, and some of these become couples committed to a life spent together as family. In the context of this open, free, and multicultural American society, my decision to participate in interfaith weddings feels as natural to me as breathing. Because it is among the sacred duties of a rabbi to bring Jewish wisdom, traditions, and spirituality to the life cycle of Jews, I cannot imagine turning down the request of a Jewish partner to fulfill that role of at a wedding regardless of the religious tradition of their intended spouse. After all, my refusal will not stop an interfaith couple from getting married, but it would leave a space in the wedding where Judaism could have provided great meaning and holiness for all present. I'm aware that there are those who believe that by officiating at these weddings, I am doing a grave disservice to the cause of Jewish continuity. I believe that this attitude ignores the larger reality that nowadays any individual can just as easily be part of our society without religious affiliation than with one. I know many couples that consist of two individuals who were born Jewish, but now have nothing to do whatsoever with Jewish life. I also know dozens of interfaith couples who are continuously immersed in all things Jewish, and they all agree that their path might have been a whole lot different if they had been turned down when they asked a rabbi to help bring Judaism into their wedding ceremony. Ensuring an American Jewish future has nothing to do, in my opinion, with interfaith marriages. Continuity depends on creating and maintaining compelling and meaningful Jewish communities, ones that embrace the presence and contributions of members who claim an array of religious backgrounds. Multiculturalism has been built into our future. It is time to learn how to sing Shalom Chavarim in Japanese. And so that's the essay for today about officiating at interfaith weddings. Have some hello greetings. My friend Ben says that he wishes there was more good old-fashioned American left-wing Judaism in Israel. And he's missing his CRC family. And I will say that there is certainly a liberal Jewish movement in Israel. It's smaller, obviously, than in America. I'll give a pitch for my favorite, not my favorite, one of my favorite progressive Jewish synagogues in Jerusalem, which is Kol HaNeshama. Rabbi Levi Kalman was the founding rabbi. I believe he's now the rabbi emeritus, but it's an amazingly spiritual community, progressive politically, but also religiously, consists not only of a number of American Olim, Americans who've made Aliyah to Israel, but many Israelis of various backgrounds. So I'm not sure, Ben, if you're in Jerusalem or not, but there are other progressive communities, Reform, Reconstructionist, Renewal, Conservative, throughout Israel. So I hope that you find a community that is meaningful to you, a non-Orthodox community, if that's what you're looking for. My friend Karen is commenting how beautiful it is to hear, I think, this message of inclusivity and interfaith embrace. So listen, I appreciate. Oh, there we go. Oh, Debbie, miss you too. Sending you healing blessings for your continued recovery. Have a comment here about Karen, whose conversion to Judaism turned her inter-Christian family, I think meaning members of different denominations, Christian denominations, into an interfaith one. Yeah, inter-Christian to interfaith. See, America, I love religion in America. I really do. And Karen believes that living in an interfaith way strengthen community, our whole community and society. And I agree. And Angela, my friend Angela, the wonderful communications director of CRC, is someone who has been a left-wing fan from the time I pitched this idea. And I'm glad you're out there, Angela. And I guess to everyone who's watching now and who will watch the video, as always, I pray that you stay well, that those you love are well, and that somehow all of us are part of the healing of everybody and the healing of the whole world, which certainly needs it. And I'm glad we're committed to this public health this public health initiative that we've taken on, unlike anything I can think of, to make sure that we do everything we can to mitigate serious illnesses and to mitigate the number of deaths. And I hope and pray that we return when it's safe to our social lives and our economic lives and our spiritual lives that are not only computer to computer, but person to person and face to face. And I'm glad, Bear, that you are here. And for everyone, tune in Thursday. I will say this: I'll give you a hint about before I sign off for Thursday. That if you're looking at me here, I'm probably shaggier than even I usually am. I think many of us are, and so in honor of shagginess, my next From the Left Wing essay on Thursday at noon will be about hair. So there you go, a little tease, little spoiler alert. And for folks that are enjoying this series, we'll see you Thursday at noon and beyond. So have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and shalom.